Butler. Muted, Carla.
Okay, just getting myself situated. I'm so happy to be able to be here today and to introduce our speaker, CHESHA Hodge. CHESHA Hodge, I knew I was going to do that. CHESHA Hodge is the new Sustainable Food Systems Program Manager with the City of Newark's Office of Sustainability. While serving the community in this pertinent role, she is also a registered dietitian supporting the nutrition needs of long COVID patients in a research capacity with Rutgers University's Robert Wood Johnson Medical School's Department of Pulmonary Care. Ms. Hodge is the founder of the Balanced Diet LLC, established in 2018. The Balanced Diet's mission is to inspire healthier living through nutritional education and self-discovery. She founded the Balanced Diet with the belief that wellness is all-encompassing and that health is maintained not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually as well. As a recent non-traditional graduate of the historically Black college university, Delaware State University, Ms. Hodge served her community as a nutrition educator with the Delaware State University's Cooperative Extension branch of SNAP Ed. Recently completing her term, Ms. Hodge was also appointed to serve on the Legislative Public Policy Committee with the Academy of Nutrition and with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. This role was a segue from her service on the board of directors for the Delaware affiliate of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics as the Nutrition Services Payment Specialist, and was a 2020 recipient of the National Commission of Dietetic Registration Foundation's Diversity Scholarship. Also, while enrolled in the Coordinated Dietetic Program, Ms. Hodge was a recipient of the USDA 1890 National Scholars Program grant. Prior to her focus on preventive health measures, Ms. Hodge addressed social ills with service in the city of Newark for over 10 years. Here, she led an array of community improvement initiatives. Some of her most rewarding work has come from her role as school operations manager, community relations specialist, parent engagement leader, and nutritional advisory board facilitator at Bard High School Early College. During that time, Ms. Hodge also served as troop leader of Girl Scout Troop 51027 in the North Ward. Ms. Hodge is most notably remembered for hosting 3 of Newark's first and largest community baby showers as program director of the Newark Now Family Success Centers in 2010, 2011, and 2012. Ms. Hodge's academic achievements include earning a Bachelor of Science degree in public health and a Master of Public Administration from Rutgers University, as well as recently earning a Bachelor of Science degree in Food and Nutritional Sciences from Delaware State University. So that's the kind of the official record, which is very impressive. And I think it's important for us to kind of celebrate people's accomplishments and recognize them, because they are usually hard-earned and well-deserved. And so we want to acknowledge that. And I also want to say that I met Ms. Hodge, or Hodge, earlier this month at the ribbon cutting for the improvements at Jesse Allen Park. And just since that meeting and in the preparation for the meeting today, what I've come to know about her is that she's a person who is wise beyond her years. She's a person who is very thoughtful and caring and in touch with connecting with folks in positive ways. And that has come through all of my interactions with her, even the way she signs off email messages. And those things make a difference. So I'm looking forward to the presentation today, to hear the information that's shared and also to hear more from Ms. Hodge. So with that, I turn it over to you, Ms. Hodge.
Thank you so much, Ms. Carla. That was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. And I'm so thankful for you giving me this opportunity to share information and ushering me through the process with your patience and your kindness. You know, as Ms. Carla shared, I got the opportunity to meet both her and Ms. Donna at Jesse Allen Park. And I think I was only 3 days into my role with the city. And it was a lot. It was a lot to take in. It was a lot of people to meet, but it felt so good to be back. And I say that because, you know, as you're reading a little bit of my bio, I did transition and I moved to Delaware so that I can go specifically to a HBCU that wasn't too far from home. I love my family dearly and I want to stay as connected to them as possible. So it was like, okay, I'm gonna go just a little far away, not too far. But yes, it is a pleasure to be here, to be back, to still have been connected, to reconnect, to have my feet planted on the soil and to continue to do great work. The presentation I have, it's more so a conversation. I want to have a conversation. Of course, I want to give a little bit of an overview about who I am and what I do, but it really helps to have a very personalized approach to meeting people. And, you know, one of the things that we used to say in church, we used to say heart to heart and breast to breast. And you start conversations here before you start passing along business cards and hoity-toity and arms in the air and this is what I do. And I don't work like that. I do not work that way. And it was interesting, almost I would even say surprising, when I was selected for this role, because I'm not rude or anything, but I don't pull any punches. And I come from a place where if this is the city I'm going to serve, we're going to serve it right. I'm over the whole sick, sad, poor, woe is me, Newark, because that's not what Newark is. That's the projection of Newark to get funding, which is unfortunate. But that's not what the city is at all. Come down, meet the people, have conversations, and you'll see that even, you know, when I do a lot of research based off of things that have been put out, it doesn't sit right with me. But this is a recorded meeting, so I'll keep that brief. I don't know where it's going to go, but I at least want to stay in my contractor position with the city for the next 2 years. So I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna have conversations offline, but I am going to share my screen and get started on my presentation. So thank you so much for everyone, just for having me here and for being a listening ear. And please don't hesitate in sharing or asking questions as we go along. And share. Great. Is everyone able to see my screen? Just nodding your head. Okay, fantastic. So Ms. Carla asked like to come up with a title for this session. And I'm thinking, you know, I think it's best for me to also be able to encompass the road that I've been on. As shared, I was a Girl Scout leader. I was a Girl Scout. And to be now a registered dietitian, to work in policy, to have started a nutritional advocacy group at Bard High School, to always have food and the systems thereof to kind of float around in the ether around me, and to navigate in a way that was true to my passion, which is food, has been the most rewarding. So I am pleased to kind of take you along that ride, but then also kind of cater to the role that I am stepping into. So if there are some gaps, forgive me, because I'm still filling into the role as Donna and I talked about earlier, just kind of filling into this role. So yes, this is going to be just the discussion of food systems, a conversation, and from a dietitian's perspective. So if you look at this, right, this is a picture here. And when most people think about food systems, I often hear a particular coined phrase, is anybody bold enough to guess what that coin phrase is when you think about food systems that may be depicted in this image?
Food desert.
Food desert is one of them.
Coined, meaning you hear it.
Yep. Food desert is a coined term, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about that as well.
Fresh fruits and vegetables.
Fresh fruits and vegetables, something else when you think about food systems.
You
And
are what you eat.
Well, when I think about food systems and we connect it to urban areas, it's always a negative. We don't have, it's not in, in reach. When we talk about our children, sometimes what comes out is, oh, they didn't even know that it came from the dirt, or that type of thing. Most urban people, it's a myth that, we don't know that much about gardening when it's innate. It comes from our ancestors. And so it is repeated over and over, and then people tend to believe that.
yes,
And
Yeah.
it's more about give the people the fish instead of teach the fish, something that was lost from our ancestors. And so when I hear food systems, I think a lot about myths and vehicles on how to get funding. And then all the people that's left out, the people of color that are in the systems. So I think about that, the injustices and the half truths and some of the myths.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a great point, and also a great segue into the concept of from farm to table, right? You hear a lot of farm to table,
Yes,
and
yes.
understanding that there's also a very cultural approach to farm and table.
Mm.
And I won't go too far off topic, but there is a historical aspect and a skill set that was seen as valuable at a time when you had settlers that were unfamiliar with the land, but wanted to capitalize upon it and then also produce and live. And so, as you're saying, Ms. Donna, there is a skill set which is innate in us as Black people to be able to go from seed to fruit. And so it's so beautiful to be able to lend this conversation back into a city where there is a large population of Black and Brown people, Hispanic, Latinx, African-derived African people that are here in the city that come with a set of skills, whether they have utilized them skills or are in a place where they want to be able to utilize them so that they can do what? Capitalize and survive. So that's where we are. And so when you continue to look at food systems, again, there are so many different aspects that are associated with, not because food isn't just plants, right? It kind of can branch off into ruminant animals and cows and goats and things that eat the land, eat the produce of the land, and then also can be used as a food. But then you also have to consider how it gets, what that journey looks like when you're thinking about production, when you're thinking about storage, when you're thinking about waste. It's very complicated, but not at the same time. And so it's so important, I believe, for individuals to understand that it is indeed a food system, because as many of you who are gardeners understand that with food waste turns into compost to then be used to replant. So it is indeed a true food system. So food desert, oh, it's going on its own here. Let me slow it down. Okay. So the concept of a food desert is what brought me into the role that I am in now with the city of Newark. And so I wanted to provide a quick blurb that identifies what a food desert is, because as of recently, I believe it was January 2022, there was a report that was out that said that all wards of the city of Newark are within the top 10 notable food deserts in New Jersey. And when you look at what a food desert is, or even if you just kind of break down the word food desert, desert being barren, being limited to no access, we're looking at a census tract that meets both low income, low access criteria, which include, and I find this very interesting. So if we can have a brief conversation about that afterwards, I am being mindful of time. Poverty rate is greater than or equal to 20%, or median family income does not exceed 80%. And that's rural urban, because they do have distinctive factors that make a difference between two. At least 500 people, or 33% of the population, located more than 1 mile away from a supermarket or a large grocery store. A supermarket or a large grocery store. To me, that's not necessarily an issue. Oh man, this is a recorded call. Let me reel it back.
Go for it.
Causes me to question the definition of food accessibility. Like really break down food accessibility, because a farmer's market can provide food that is not considered a supermarket or a large grocery store. A local bodega can also provide food that's not considered a supermarket or a large grocery store. But to me, it's not a question of sincere food accessibility. It's having access to a large supermarket or a large grocery store, a company that benefits from having individuals shop at their store.
Money.
It has nothing to do with food accessibility, health and wellness. It's, can people shop at this big major chain grocery store?
Mhm.
I don't know, right? So I'm going to open the floor to some thoughts just based off of that information that I just shared. And if you can just kind of limit it to about 1.5 minutes or so. No takers? Still just
Well,
let.
I have something. I know when you were talking about that, that's the first thing that I thought about was pricing, cost, money, right? Because you can't, there's a farmer's market that takes place right next to my house every Thursday. So people do have access to locally grown food. There's a coalition that, you know, provides fresh food that people can order and have delivered or picked up from several locations right here in Newark. So it's more, I think it's more about the money, like come shop at my store or this large supermarket, because it's money. It boils down to money. I don't think accessibility is as daunting as people tend to think it is here in the city of Newark. It's just, where do you choose to spend your money? And it's about education as well.
I agree. I agree. Any other thoughts?
So I'm over the fence because I'm gonna go way back to what Newark was. And every neighborhood had a supermarket that we can walk to. And some of us had two, right? It was self-contained neighborhoods just like it is in the Ironbound today. And certain areas of the North Ward, Central Ward, West Ward, South Ward, we had all those same things. There were trucks that came down the street. They had fruit, vegetables, and all of this that you can buy in your block. So the city, you know, it was a whole different mindset. Being mindful that everybody don't have a car, right? And so a lot of those elements that was necessary for everybody to enjoy fresh fruits and vegetables was already contained. And that is, you know, kind of was dismantled after the rebellion, and it never came back. And all these gaps were put there. And so we had to be filled in with the farmers markets and the this and that. You know, our farmers market was Mulberry Street on a Saturday and Sunday, where everybody went from all over the city to get extra stuff that you didn't see in our local supermarkets. And so I remember when I lived through when we didn't have it, we had to go a long way just to get to a supermarket, and now. So I don't have the answers, but I can compare the history. You know, Malcolm X said that history's greatest reward is through its research. And if you dig deep enough, you will find out the whys. So I'm learning from you, Ms. Hodge, looking at the past and what's going on in the future, and how do we connect it to make it better.
And we learn from one another. And it's always important to keep history available so that there is always a reference point, so that you can always see how far have we come or how much did we regress.
Yes.
And so I asked this question of what is a food desert because I like to stimulate curiosity. Oftentimes we get to a position, and I'm speaking from a Newarker's perspective, oftentimes we get to a position where we allow other people to label who we are. It's just like, oh, it's in the paper. This is who we are. This is what we are. This is what the city is, based off of an outsider's perspective. And I just simply challenge people to be curious and to ask questions and to say, does this really make sense? Does this really reflect me?
I see that Kathleen Witcher has her hand up. I don't know if you had something to ask or to add, Kathleen?
Yes, and I think the analysis that Donna just gave was just wonderful, remarkable. I think she connected so many dots. But I just wanted to add the ways we used to cook. We used to have a fish market over there right by Nat Turner Park. See, we don't have those things available to us now, and they were owned by people who lived in our city, in our neighborhoods. Our children have learned this fast food. They didn't have McDonald's and Burger King and all of that at the time that Donna is referring to. So our nutritional value has changed. We learned a lot about that in school when I was teaching, because we had an activity where parents were to contribute food for a Thanksgiving meal at the school. And we had the ingredients and everything, but we were lacking the knowledge of how to make a turkey, because we have lost that kind of thing. So the cooking we used to do as a regular for our families, the dinner time we used to have where all the family gathered and sat down at a table, are missing from our culture now. I just wanted to add.
That's a great addition, because not only are you speaking to changes in social behavior, in family constructs, but you're also talking about enterprise, shifts in where we were spending our money, who received more attention. And it became less of the local, homegrown, familiar neighborhood, mom and pop fish market, and more so a larger corporation that doesn't provide the same quality or nutrient dense foods that you were able to take and process at home on your own, but to then go to a McDonald's, Burger King. My mom always talks about how White Castle was a special thing. They went to White Castle once every 5 months.
That's right. That's right. I had to say that.
Yes, and the food is already processed for you. That's very interesting, and that's a very good point. And I'm glad that we can have that conversation, and I'm excited to hear that people are thinking, and really thinking, really thinking. I'm excited. That makes me happy.
Susan has her hand up for one
Oh,
moment.
okay.
It's
And
been
I'm
up for
sorry,
a while.
Jen, if somebody can please moderate for me. I'm not ignoring
That's
anyone, but
okay.
my screen is
Susan,
my screen. Okay.
Yeah, yes, thank you so much for this, CHESHA conversation. Two things that I agree that the naming and framing has been cited as a critical beginning of empowerment, that people name and frame in terms they hold dear. So I just really appreciate you mentioning that. You know, we have to question the labels, change the language. I also, I'm with you that the policies, there can be tremendous status quo inertia in a policy like this because it only mentions supermarket, and so that that is amplified. The very system that's driving the economics drive, you know, importing things from all over the world at cheap prices and global warming. So changing the language of the policy and mentioning smallhold models and farmers markets, and as was said before, the key is competitive pricing for those farmers markets. But if they're just mention the urban farming and the local markets and walking to them right away, the policy will then start changing behaviors in the right way. So I just think this is really exciting what you're getting at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I saw another little hand flash.
Sonia Dabney.
Okay.
Yes, good morning again. So the other aspect is not mentioned that people can grow food in their own backyard. They don't necessarily have to go to a bodega or whatever, and had done so even back, you know, as Donna mentioned, back in the early, well, our parents' generation as well. And they didn't worry about having to, if they didn't have the economic capability all the time or large families, they made sure to grow most of their foods. So that was the point I wanted to make, along with the farmers markets, where it was, I grew up in Detroit. So for me, our farmers market was a little bit of everything, a poultry market, a fish market, and they came from all over the state in order to sell there at the farmers market.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, the local growers.
And that's a great point. And so this is an informational exchange. And so I'm writing down, you know, you're saying being able to grow in your own backyard. I'm able to grow. I don't have a yard, but I bought a planter box and I have my peppers in there and some other goodies. But I'm also looking at the majority of residents here in the city of Newark, what is their housing situation? What if you reside in an apartment building, an apartment complex? And so maybe that's an area United Parks as one, or you know, anybody else who's inspired may want to consider, or maybe me, right? Writing it down, you know, how do you grow in an apartment? What does that look like when we're talking about self-sufficiency? So great points, really, really awesome points. And you know, because of this identification of Newark being a severe food desert and having this need to address food insecurity is the birthing of Nourishing Newark, where the Office of Sustainability received $2 million to grant out to organizations that can put together a plan or support a pre-existing plan to ensure that everyone has access to food. Generally speaking, everyone in the city of Newark has access to food. I'll stand corrected. So there's something that I added in the chat. It is the link to the city of Newark. Let me do a time check too. Okay. It's the City of Newark Environmental Resource Inventory that was shared last year. The link is in there. I am going to open up a couple of key pages that are dear to me, because what we're going to talk about in a couple slides from now is how do we make food systems really full circle, and full circle from the perspective of a dietitian. So I think this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm still sharing. Yes. Okay. Okay, so it's going to take a so because this is going to take a while to load. Oh, wait a second, maybe it won't. Can I stop sharing my screen? And Miss Carla, you'll pick up where we left off.
Okay, do you want me to show the document?
Yes, if you can, please, from
Okay,
page
yeah,
one.
if
I'll
you
stop
stop.
sharing.
Okay.
Excellent. Would you be able to go to page 136 of this document, please?
136.
And I see there's a comment Ms. Dina shared. Ms. Dina, as we get to that page, do you mind expounding upon what you placed in the chat, please? So your pages don't align with my pages with this document. So hold on one moment. Let me see if mine is up, okay?
Okay.
Dean, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
I was hoping
apologize
you
for
would
coming
be
in
able
and
to
out.
expand what you shared in the chat while we
Excuse
get
me?
this.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yes, can you share a little bit about what you put in the chat while we get to the proper page?
Oh, okay. What I put in the chat was that, growing food, as Ms. Stabney has said, is you can grow food in your backyard. I think the not a problem, I don't want to say a problem, but the challenge is trying to get people to reframe or rethink the whole idea of what a garden space looks like. Because we're so used to thinking that we need all of this space in rows and rows and rows of gardening, like that's how I grew up gardening, right? We had in-ground gardening. Now, the concept here, especially in Newark and other urban environments, are raised beds and container gardening, right? Because of the contamination of the soil and the amount of time and money that it would take to amend soil so that you can have in-ground gardening. So you can grow food, like you said, in a planter box, right? You can take seeds that you get from the supermarket when you buy your peppers or your tomatoes, and plant them in soil, right? There's this whole concept of what they call a junkyard gardening, right? So what I'm saying is that it's not as difficult to grow food that can sustain us as it used to be, because there's this new reframe of what gardening space looks like. I did a TED talk not long ago on reframing the idea of gardening, and it talked about some of the easy ways that you can grow garden space. If you have a balcony, you're talking about an apartment complex. There's space in an apartment complex. So then you're talking about maybe intergenerational gardening, because if within that apartment complex, there could be places to put raised beds, right? So then you have a whole community of gardening. That's a big thing now too, is community gardens. Another thing is connecting curriculum with garden spaces. So now you have children growing gardens, and they're talking to their parents about, peppers and onions and, squash and collard greens. And those are things that are really easy to grow, especially collard greens. I grow collard greens every year in garden spaces, garden bags.
Yeah.
It's almost like that felt kind of material because they're more absorbent and they, take in the sun and things like that, right? So it really has a lot to do with education, and it really has a lot to do with reframing the idea of garden. Sometimes I don't even like to say garden. I like to say green spaces, right? Because it's easier for people to understand the concept, I think, of a green space as opposed to a garden, because they think it has to be all of this, and it really doesn't.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so it goes back to this idea of reframing the narrative and being able to make food more accessible in ways that kind of think outside of the box, or the boxes that have been set for us, to really start to dig in, that's pun intended, but dig into thinking creatively and reprioritizing. Reprioritizing is another really big aspect when you start thinking about not just expanding upon green spaces, but improving health.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to segue that, and I have the page. And thank you so much for your patience, and thank you, Dina, for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Please, like, I hope everybody's kind of writing this stuff down, because we got work to do. So when we think about health, we're using the ERI to just get a look at what's happening, or a snapshot into what we see here. I'm going to see if I can scroll down a little bit. This is asthma. And not that I don't care about asthma, but I do. But I want to look at coronary heart disease and just take a look at these areas. Now, don't think I would be able to. Okay, and I don't want to only highlight one area, because we are one park, right? So just kind of take a look at which areas not only have that higher rate, that 9.1 to 12% of adults with coronary disease, but I'm going to challenge you to look at the areas that don't. Because oftentimes, and there's been several studies about the things that we focus on and how they begin to manifest themselves. And you see that on a very spiritual, holistic realm, but then you also see it in real practice every single day. And I think that's another compounding issue that I'm trying to fight against, and I'm sure you all are as well, is what we are not. Let's change and continue to change that narrative. And it's important, yes, we can focus on the areas where you see there's a higher prevalence of coronary heart disease, but what's happening in the area where there isn't? Continue to be curious, continue to think outside the box. And we're going to also look at a couple other maps. So one of the things I'm in the process of doing is trying to figure out how I can juxtapose or overlay these map images on top of each other, so that I can kind of get a look at where we have these differences, where we have this higher prevalence, and what's actually happening in these areas. So this is life expectancy. We have a higher life expectancy, 83, 86. Look, see, I ain't trying to do this to you guys, to be flipping back and forth, but that's what I spend my days doing. Flipping back and forth, right? Taking a look at the differences in the colors of these maps. I'm just going to do that a couple of times. And I'm going to briefly ask if anybody notices anything. Don't be shy.
Not very much green space compared to the industrial space.
Mm-hmm. And so when you look at life expectancy, there seems to be a higher life expectancy in particular areas.
Right.
So the map represents, I know this is the city of Newark.
Yes.
Right? Go back to the red. Okay. Now the green. So it seems that in Newark, there's the life expectancy is lower, because I'm looking at, what is that, 78?
Yes.
And in 280, 78 is in our hood, I'm thinking, right? And then as we travel up to 280, which is what, Bloomfield, West Orange, South Orange, right?
Yeah.
Livingston, Upper Montclair kind of way, that the life expectancy is higher. So that tells me that there is more disease, more perhaps poor air quality,
Mhm.
you know, all of those things that go along with inadequate
Absolutely.
living
And even including violence, right? You have to add the concept of violence into the conversation as well, because when you think about environmental health factors, that's one of them.
right. And then you have high blood pressure. I didn't see the other. I didn't see the.
Oh, no, because I'm flashing through them because I have not yet gained the skill set to be able to kind of flash them back and forth. But I wanted
Obesity
to
rate, high blood pressure.
provide you all with a glimpse. So this is a map, high blood pressure by census tract, and that's overlaid with the obesity rate.
Wow. And what was the green?
The green was life expectancy.
Oh, life. Okay, life expectancy, and the red was life expectancy as well, right?
The first red one was coronary heart disease.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So take a look at a few of these areas. And so what I wanted to also do is this is diabetes. I wanted to, what page is this? 150. Look at limited access to healthy food.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Right. And where are those particular areas where there seems to be a higher limitation? And again, when we're looking at limited access, we're talking about 1 mile. And when we're also thinking about access to healthy foods, that definition is present here. And I'll read it aloud. It says, having limited access to healthy foods is defined as the percent of individuals living more than a half mile, I'm corrected, from the nearest supermarket, supercenter, or large grocery store. This particular map 57 shows the percentage of residents with limited access to healthy foods by census tract. While 58% of urban New Jersey residents live greater than a half mile from the nearest healthy food store, most of Newark census tracts have less than 10% of its residents living this far, with some census tracts in each ward ranging up to 70%. So we're seeing a theme here when we're identifying what is a limited or where is the limitation to food access. And they're also saying healthy foods, but when I go into a supermarket, I see more than healthy foods in there. Whereas when you consider, and I know the word healthy is relative, and that's a whole nother conversation, but if you're saying that healthy food is only in supermarkets, that's the problem.
Right.
Because that's not the case. I don't know if anybody else has done it, but I definitely do it. And I do it judgment free. I'll be honest, it's without judgment, but I look in people's carts, especially if I see people with children. I was a latchkey kid of the 80s. And I knew that when it was time for me to pick my brother up from school, and then we had to get home and we had to eat something. Yes, we had more processed convenient foods. We had Hot Pockets. We had the chicken pot pies, something that we can either just put in the oven until it's done or put in the microwave, heat it up and eat it. I understand that. But I say that because if you're only limiting healthy foods to supermarkets, you're doing another group of urban gardeners a disservice. And you're almost saying that, well, what is everybody else doing? You're go ahead.
And you're exposing people to those whole aisles of junk food and soda. It's just so overwhelming. So you're saying access, but you're actually making it easier and easier to get candy, junk, it's just overwhelming how much there is.
Extremely overwhelming. And what was said earlier, and please forgive me, I can't recall who it was, talked about education, because there is a way that, I as a dietitian or even somebody who's a nutritionist can help somebody to be able to navigate through the supermarket. It's all constructed in a particular type of way where you have your perishables on the outside and you have your non-perishables on the inside. You have your foods that contain less salt on the outside and those that have more salt on the inside. And so like you're saying, you're providing access to healthy food, but you're also exposing somebody to unhealthy food if they don't know
That's right.
how to navigate in that supermarket. And there's marketing that gets done. There's billboards, there's commercials that are saying, you know, eat this cereal, you know, have this Progresso soup, or there's so many different constructs that are leading people to make poor dietary decisions that expand beyond what is being defined as healthy access to food.
Mhm.
Tanya Dabney and Shani Patterson have their hands up.
Please.
Yeah, I'm a lifelong dieter, I must add, because I've always been so many percentages over the normal average weight limit. So I've always dieted. So what you just said regarding how to shop is one of the first things that I've learned to adhere to over the years on how to go into a grocery store to shop. And a lot of times I won't even go into the stores, again, for the second point of what you're saying, because you go in, you shop on the outer edges, not the inner. And if you want to shop healthy, low fat, low salt, and all that, that's where you find your healthier foods, particularly for, like I said, somebody who's a dieter or always watching fat, carbs, and proteins. But the second thing you said is, I don't like to go in the major chains because of the advertisements. Because I am one, I had to go to a doctor, nutritionist, all that I eat with my eyes. So I don't watch commercials. You know, a commercial comes on in the show I'm watching, I get up, I walk away. Because I could just see the pizza one time, and I don't care how many days I don't eat pizza, somewhere in that 30 days, I'm gonna get a slice of pizza because of that commercial. So I know my triggers, but my point being, when it comes to healthy foods and all that, you're right, it's about education. And I went out and took a picture of my planter where I grew tomatoes. And although I didn't prepare them, and actually while we started the meeting, I prepared fried green tomatoes. So I'm sure that first part is not what you want to hear, but I went and I picked all those tomatoes off the last of the ones on the vine, picked them off, sliced them up. I said, well, the only way for me to eat green tomatoes is to fry them. So today I'm giving in to a fried meal. But either way, I went out in my yard, I picked them off, and now I have these, and they're delicious. So if I could show you a picture, I will.
I want some.
That's what I just sat down. So now I'm on video.
Okay. Somebody else had their hand up.
Yes, and to her point also, at least you grew it yourself. It's a little bit better, you know.
That's right.
But I spent some time doing some dietary cooking in a facility. It was a private facility, so people were entitled to eat whatever options we had available. And sometimes people had dialysis treatments, and I would get an order to make a grilled cheese sandwich or something like that. And it used to kill me because they were technically entitled to have whatever they wanted. Even if there was a salad option, some people still, at the end of their lives, you know, 60, 70, 80 years old, were still making those choices. Like, to be leaving a dialysis treatment and then be requesting a grilled cheese sandwich with white bread and American cheese, it's just, I couldn't work there too long and consciously do that to people. So I guess to your point, like the education and those deeply ingrained habits and comforts, sometimes I feel play a role too.
It definitely can. And, you know, and you know, man, whew. so many nuggets were shared between the both of you. And there is an educational piece that's lost. But for anybody that's familiar with the trans theoretical model of behavior change, people have to be, and you would know this even if you're just having a conversation with someone and you're trying to persuade or dissuade someone from doing things, or just yourself, you have to be ready to change. You have to be ready, no matter what's happening in the element around you, That's one of the limitations that I have as a dietitian. If you're unable, if you're not in a space where you're ready for behavior change, there's nothing I can do for you. Otherwise, I'm just a talking head. It's also important for people to be educated and to also be able, and I shared this earlier, to be able to prioritize. The two most invaluable things that we have, time and health. Because if you don't have health, what do you have? I segue that into saying, or not necessarily into saying, but just kind of moving into, again, touching on food systems and from my perspective, a dietitian's perspective of food systems. And so there's these 4 components: sustainable food implementation. That's what we're all talking about. That's what we're all here for. We do it in our own unique niches and we make it do what it do. And I celebrate that. In understanding, however,
I'll go off it.
oh, I'm sorry, is someone speaking? Okay, no, okay, false alarm. When we're looking at these components, social equity, environmental protection, economic viability, we're looking at them from so many different perspectives. And it's important to first be able to understand what food systems are, who the players are, and the impact that they have. Not just the impact on providing food, but the impact on the environment as well. That's also important. Understanding food waste and where that goes. And I'm not just talking about food, potato skin scraps. I'm talking about food waste when it comes out of the human body. We're living creatures as well. Food comes in, food goes out. So when you're thinking about, sewage and how that's managed and public works, all of these aspects have a very key role when we look at what food systems are. And oftentimes we really, really define our scope to such a place where we overlook the other players, and then we end up falling short. Accessibility, I put the eradication of food deserts, increases the number of accessibility points that people have for biological energy sources. And so biological energy sources is food. Increasing access, like let us continue to increase access. In the meantime, we're also trying to change policy. We're trying to change those definitions and that narrative surrounding what food access actually is. And it's important for us as leaders, because we're all leaders, to start to really highlight the great work that we're doing and say, wait a second, you're not going to label us as a food desert because this person has a garden here. This person has a garden here. And if you're defining it by access to healthy food, it's here. Why are you overlooking us? Be curious and think outside the box and learn how to advocate for ourselves. You have to also look at production. That's a process within itself. Post-harvest handling, distribution, as I mentioned before, food storage, something else that gets overlooked because that can then lead to food waste. You put in all this work, or looking at it from a consumer's perspective, if I go to the farmer's market and somebody gives me all this produce, I'm excited, I have all this wonderful produce, but if I leave it sitting on the counter, it's going to go bad in 2 days. If I don't know what to do with it, if I don't understand that I can't store tomatoes in the refrigerator because they lose their quality and taste, if I don't understand that I don't store potatoes in the refrigerator, so there's different aspects that fall into providing education, and it's multi-spoked. It really is multi-spoked. And lastly, the piece that's most important to me, as all this is important, but I'm going to say most important because it's often overlooked, is consumption. Because even as I gave in that last example, if I have the food, but I don't eat it, what was the point? What was the point? If I go to the store and I use my SNAP and I get all this great food and all this healthy living and we're going to do better, but this one doesn't like it. This one says it's slimy. This one doesn't eat it, or it ends up going bad. It doesn't make its way into my mouth. What is the point? So that's where I come from. I am being mindful of time. I keep looking to the side because I know we don't have too much time left. And I told Ms. Carla, I said, we're going to be short today. This is a short presentation, but I love the fact that it was super engaging. And we were able to share so much information. I'm trying to. Oh, here it is. So we're not going to do this particular exercise. We're going to make our way to the end. I'm so appreciative of this robust conversation. I do want to keep to the agenda. As mentioned, they picked the wrong one, right? The wrong one or the right one to be in the Office of Sustainability right now, because I mean, every day I'm looking at stuff like, this ain't right. This ain't right either. This ain't right. We got to change it. We have to change it. One of the things that I'm going to be doing very, very soon, and in the process of looking at the historical data, is to revive the Food Policy Council. That was an initiative that seemed to have kicked off sometime in 2011 and then kind of kicked up again. And then during COVID, it kind of sizzled back down. But I want to pick that back up. And it's going to be supported by the city of Newark, but it has to be community-based, because, man, this is recorded, isn't it? I'm only in this role. This is a contracted role for 2 years. So then what? Now I'm a community member again, right? And
Okay.
I take the community to keep things going and to keep things going and growing, because, and I say that because people are changing hats in City Hall all the time. So you can't put in the work to have a council developed to only know that if somebody leaves, then no one's going to do anything. Or if there's a new administration, then that whole idea goes to pots. It has to be in the hands of community. And we have to think generationally. It cannot only be people of a particular age and a particular level of experience. We have to make sure that we're engaging our young people so that they can be torch bearers and keep this process coming along. Besides that, I also have my own private practice. It's the Balanced Diet. I am working on, as we speak, making sure that I'm able to accept multi-layers of insurance by 2023. So bear with me. I am out of pocket now, but I will be doing more. And I do live community sessions. I have fun food that you can play with. I do a lot of work with UCC and some other organizations that look for nutrition education. And so this is me. Thank you so much for listening to this talking head, sharing with me this conversation, which was super robust, as I said before. It was a pleasure. I can't wait to send my $20 in so that I can be United Park as one member as well. So thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Wow.
And I'm going to hang out until the end of the meeting today.
You're taking us all the way to the end.
Yeah.
You know, so God has a way of doing things that we really have no idea what he's going to do. She's going to do. So we've been waiting for you in the community. You are a perfect fit when you talk about multi-generational and when you talk about the teaching and making sure that we're passing the baton to those that come behind us through education and support. And so you are, and I've said it to a lot of people that join, you're that missing link that we've been waiting for to continue what was put in place originally by, and I got to say it out loud, Mildred Helms Park Resurrection Committee.
Yeah.
A whole group of elders. And so these topics that we've been having is nothing new. It's just that the soldiers are here for them to manifest. So we thank you so much for being willing to be a part of, to teach us. As I take my 8 legs from the spider, a Nazi, right? I'm just overwhelmed with joy with where we are today. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I know that the Nourishing Newark grant is going to be very powerful because you're advocating for the educational piece and the inclusiveness, right? And your eyes are open to community that are doing the work. So I'm really, really grateful for that. So United Parks is one. Next meeting is Saturday, December the 17th from 10 to 11. I've already did like my closing remarks, but I'd like to leave it open so that there's other voices that can, lift up our next generation, Ms. Hodge, Dina, Shani, or our young people that we have to lift up as they do what they got to do. And so if there's any words of inspiration, let's give it to them. And I want to thank everybody for coming, but I am just so excited on what we are doing. Pat, you're sitting there looking like that, but doesn't this remind you of what was started with Fanny and Deacon Cross? You can give testimony on where this all came from.
Yes, absolutely. It was a long time in trying to get Mildred Helms Park Resurrection Committee together, in addition to the $1.4 million for the renovation of the park. And we have been really wanting this for a long time, especially the education portion of it, because it's a lot that we don't know, and when you know better, you do better. So it's great to have, some people on board that are going to take us the rest of the way.
Thank you. Anybody else want to throw out something?
I have something. I was just getting ready to write it, but I'm going to say it. I am so excited. I just really kind of talked to Ms. Carla a little bit, and she was telling me that you are from the Office of Sustainability. I wasn't quite sure. I know Natalie is no longer there, and I thought that you had filled her position, but Ms. Carla told me no, that you're in the Office of Sustainability. I'm excited, especially when you were talking about bringing some of the programs that won't change when the administration changes, right? Because you do all this work and then somebody comes in and they don't see the value, right? But when you put it in the hands of the people, when you put it in the hands of even our youth, right? And our elders as well, then there's value to it and it will continue. And that's why, there's a lot of garden spaces in Newark, and there's a lot of community garden spaces in Newark that need support, right? So one of the things that I'm doing in December is I'm running a year-long program. So anybody on the call who has a garden space that needs support, one of the things that the participants in that gardening program is going to have to do is they're going to have to connect with a garden that's already in existence or start their own. So I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. And I'm saying all this to say that I can't continue to do the work that I've been called to do on my own. I'm looking to scale up, and I know that I'm in the right place to do that. And as I said before, gardening spaces or green spaces are accessible. We just have to educate people so that they can see the easiness in accessing those green spaces. So CHESHA, I am so happy and so excited. My heart is pounding so fast that you're here in this space. And I know that it's only going to get better. And the most important part is what you said about education. We have to begin to educate, and we don't have to own what other people see us as. We have to begin to educate ourselves and rise up.
Ms. Dabney, you got your hand up.
Yes, I was just wondering too, because I was able to take a review of the Newark 360, our sustainability is on my mind, but the oh my goodness,
Master plan.
The master plan. Thank you so much. Needless to say, I checked out the open spaces here in the West Ward, and particularly Fairmont. Obviously, this is where I'm at a lot, but at the same time, the West Ward period has a very small or limited number of open spaces, or I'm calling them green spaces. For Fairmont, it's only 0.6 acres, which is ridiculous. If we didn't count our gardens, we wouldn't be able to count anything other than the cemeteries. So I'm working to, obviously here in Fairmont, to improve that space, and along with the help of TPL, we're going to activate all our open spaces, but I wanted to know if anybody actually had information on how to have that recognized for the West Ward. How do we let them know that we have these gardens? Dina, I guess what you're saying is right along the lines of where I'm trying to go, of how do we put that on the map per se? How do we let everybody know that we do have these green spaces, and obviously they're not a part of the city's master plan, and it should be, which I thought that the green spaces or gardens would be. But I don't know how we need to make sure that that happens. I'd like to see work with that. And I know Tobias Fox is building a major food headquarters here. I'd like to have more information on how that's going to affect Fairmont and the city as a whole.
I know at one time, well, Tobias Fox was working on a map of garden spaces in Newark. I know the Greater Newark Conservancy, when they used to do their garden contest in all of Newark,
Right.
they
The
had
city
a
blew.
layout of the maps. So there is, I was even contacted through Princeton University about garden spaces here in Newark. So there's maps, there's other organizations that have been working on trying to identify the green spaces, the garden spaces, so to speak, in
Right.
Newark. I know, like I said, Tobias Fox has started one, as well as you may be able to go through the Master Gardeners, the Park of Cooperative Extension. They may have some idea as to garden spaces in Newark as well.
Okay, we want to connect them and put them on. I guess my thing is to actually make it a focal point for the city of Newark, and how the city receives it, how the city pushes the information out to other residents. Because again, we are, I don't want to say we're working in a silo as gardeners and garden spaces, but if the city, just like with the master plan, if it's not in the master plan, nobody knows that it even exists. We're counting as 0.6 acres of open space, period.
So the
So I would
master
like
plan
to
is
say that's where the advocacy part comes in with the community,
Right.
right? And plugging into council people, the sustainability office. You know, there was an office in the city with the adopt-a-lots, as well as Greater Newark Conservancy. So there was a starting point. And it's
Right.
really about revisiting and starting that advocacy piece, which is another umbrella and part of United Parks as One, because it's citywide, right? And so just
That's right.
reconnecting with the different people in the different wards that are doing it as well, La Casa, UVSO, all of them
Yeah,
that
because
are
a lot
doing
of
it,
them.
and start that coalition and then present it underneath the Sustainability Office and the Environmental Commission, because we did some of that work while we were on the Environmental Commission, Betty, Carlin, myself.
Okay.
And so a lot of it has been started, it's just revisiting.
Okay.
And that also cuts across a number of
Yes.
areas, because it's related to how do we redefine what the food system is and what it looks like, so it can reflect what our priorities and concerns are. And so the gardens and those spaces are an important part of that, as well as they are in the open space conversation. But I think a lot of what we were talking about earlier has to do with the need to make sure that the way that the local food system is presented and understood is accurate and reflects our interests and concerns and needs.
Inclusive of our gardeners, especially.
Yes.
If necessary.
Yes. Wow. We went over time, and that's so great. 11:34.
And
And we
CHESHA has
still-
her hand up. I cut in front of her.
No,
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna let it go, but I'm gonna let you be the last person. But it looked like we might even need more time when we're having these type of robust conversations. But before we go on, I want to say, Ms. Hodge, that my mind has been bubbling on all the gifts that you have to offer that is attached to the nursing grant and not, and how your voice and your expertise because TPL is one of the recipients. And so your basis is the basis of what and why we do. That's why United Parks is one is where it's at, right? And so your voice needs to be going into, not just in the office, but where the community folk like us are at these schools that you're talking about. What you do, the presentation, the kids, because it's an aspiration to become and to be similar to what you are. And so not only will I be advocating about, the connection between United Parks as one, but also through the work of the Trust for Public Land, because it goes so far and how deep. I would need you as being a part of the presentation as we introduce this Nourishing Newark. So it's more than just one space. I will be advocating in different spaces because your voice needs to be heard so that we have that direction. And with that, I'll shut up and give it to you to close us out.
So I was only going to respond in the same way that you did with regards to the marketing and the media and really celebrating the work that's being done in that Fairmont area. And, I can honestly say one of the directions that the city has gone in since the new administration is the accountability is on the people. And so the people have to make it relevant. The people have to make sure that it's seen. And then we're here to do the rest of the work and to push it to the public outside of ourselves. But it's really important for the people to then understand their value and make their voices heard. I'm really humbled by this because, Ms. Donna, one of the things that you said is the importance of my voice. I had a meeting on Wednesday and I had a meeting with the awardees of the Nourishing Newark grant. And at the end, somebody said to me, CHESHA, we need you and we need your voice. And it feels like this calling. I don't mean to be too spiritual on the line. I think but it's like, okay, all right. I heard it twice now. If I hear it one more time, I'm gonna have to be put to action. But one of the things I also recognize is that I can't do it by myself. And I don't want to do it by myself. I don't want to do it alone. I'm not supposed to, because as we go into these new roles and we start filling out these shoes, you think about like a Monstera plant that has these aerial roots. I need my roots to be grounded. I need to be able to stretch and branch out and reach out and to be able to hold on to the people that have been carrying the torch before I have. So I end with that. May this be a relationship. May this be an expanding relationship. May together we grow. That's also a pun intended. May we continue to grow. May we lean upon each other for information and do so unapologetically. Just because somebody hasn't asked doesn't mean that anybody else needs to be offended. We are cultivating curious minds. To ask questions is a strong suit. And we need to ask more questions and we have to have better understanding and we have to make it make sense. And we can do that together. So thank you so much again.
Wow. That's our closing remarks. That's our closing meditation. That's our feeling our well. That's an extension to another family member. Right? That's when you come to United Parks as one, you signed yourself up to become a family member. And so we welcome you. And we thank you. Thank everybody for coming. This has been like great.
Thank you, everyone. Great. What a great way to start a Saturday morning, right?
Yeah.
Look, well, Richard, you're here. And I don't want to say that, but when sisters come together, powerful things happen. And then we got our brother holding up our back.
Always supporting us.
Okay. Anybody else have any closing remarks? Are we done? Time check, Elizabeth, 11:39. Thank you all.